Oh, thank you.
Hey everyone! Before we get this episode started, also, I wanted to sound like a YouTuber, that's why I started off with, hey everyone, like, subscribe below. You know how YouTubers are. Okay, but before we get started, I want y'all to know we are going extra big with the All-Star season of Vulnerability Time podcast. So, guess what? We got video podcast. So, click in the episode description below if you wish to watch the video of the podcast as well. It'll be a YouTube link, so you can go ahead and get it going and get watching it. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe below. Such a YouTuber, right? Anyways, folks, enjoy the episode.
Some type of line to read.
Yes, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so we're here. So now we're in part 2, John. A continuation from part 1.
I forget what we mentioned in part 1.
I forget what we mentioned in part 1 as well. But I will say, before we even started, this recording, we mentioned about cynicism, positive cynicism, and nihilism. And I was like, I have positive cynicism when it comes to the media. And then I was like, I just hope I don't ever go to nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the thing I think is what's happening. Let me pull up the definition of nihilism so I can say it correctly, so that folks will get some knowledge on what nihilism is, because I never really heard about nihilism until recently. Well,
Nihilism,
really what it means.
yeah. I mean, nihilism I had heard of as a term before, but I mean, like the positive cynicism thing, that was something that I had not learned until we spoke just, what was it, 2 minutes ago? I think when you mentioned that, I'm like, positive cynicism, I've never heard of that before.
It's really cool.
I like it.
Yeah, it's and I'll read the definition of that too. But
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, so this is what nihilism is, folks. It is the rejection of all religious and moral principles, in the belief that life is meaningless. Okay. Another definition of it is the belief that all values are baseless and that nothing can be known or communicated. Okay. There's existential nihilism and moral nihilism. Those are the two common branches of nihilism. I just learned that right now, by the way. But
That's okay.
I don't. There definitely been. There have definitely been certain things that I've been noticing recently that I'm not saying I am nihilist. I'm not saying I'm there. But I'm definitely noticing some things. And from what I do know about nihilism, there comes a point within many people's lives where that does come and it leaves, yada, 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 How about this? What it's led me... So, I gotta be vulnerable. I gotta be fucking vulnerable. I don't want to be nihilist, but I feel... I would be lying if I say I don't want to say I have a fear. I mean, I don't want to get to that point, but
Right.
If I look back 10, even 5 years from now and I am deemed nihilist, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. I just wouldn't want that to happen. But I wouldn't be shocked. And so something that I'm thinking about doing after my PhD program or during my PhD program, because I would love to do multiple studies of research. I would love to know the correlation between mental illness and nihilism.
Because I feel like there is an inherent assumption that the two kind of gravitate towards each other. That seems likely. Or at least either by stigma or something else, I feel like.
Correct. I would just love to know for factual for more qualitative reasonings of the correlation, if there is of any, between nihilism and mental illness. And yes, the term mental illness, for that research, it's going to be broad. It's going to be kind of like an autoethnography type of research as well, because I want all types of just qualitative data in there, rather than quantitative, because I know both are important. I just feel like when it comes to a subject matter like this, something so, substantial and so much, aspects and emotions, and it's so not black and white.
No.
I would think that having an autoethnography type of research with others' qualitative, research would be best.
Yeah, and that's something that would have to be qualitative, because I mean, like you said, we are not black and white as people, and like everybody's encounters with their own life experience and also their own perceptions of the world, and even in their own experience of mental illness, that's going to be different. It's like, how do we interpret things? Because like I know, like you had mentioned, like nihilism in some folks can kind of come in waves, because then there's a sense of powerlessness or helplessness that comes with that sometimes, because I might be referring to one of the, I guess, the types of nihilism, but I know in some cases, more or less, as a big brushstroke, it's almost like some people can reach a point. It's like anything that I do doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. Maybe as me personally, or as a society, we don't really seem like we're going anywhere. It's things may not or ever get good. So why should I hope that things would? And that, I know I've had moments where things are just slow, or efforts that I made to some things didn't feel like they were getting anywhere, whether it was my own issues or somebody else. But the point was always, it's like, even if I invest time in this, am I going to see any returns in maybe a reasonable amount of time? And that's a patience thing sometimes, but even still, it's like, what is the reason that I'm doing this? And if I do, is it really going to make a difference? Because if it isn't, what am I doing, or what can I do? And that ultimately can lead to a sense of helplessness. And that's where things really get bad. It's just because it's like, if you feel powerless to do anything, you feel stuck. And that's something that I know I always have to try to force myself to think about, is try to give myself something to look forward to. That's how I can stay motivated to do something. And that's a generalistic statement that won't work for everybody, because everybody's situation is different, their own personalities, their own
fits all.
Right. Yeah. And so, because even in my mind, it's like, I know I need to have something to look forward to, but sometimes it's just like, what do I look forward to? Like what can I pick? Because sometimes the problem is choice. Choice is great, but sometimes too much choice is a problem, because if you can pick everything, you can't really do anything. The word is, he who grasps at everything attains nothing. And so
where does it say that?
I don't know where I heard that before, actually. I just heard somebody mention it in the show, and I'm like, well, that's a good
Can you
accent.
say that again?
Yeah, he who grasps at everything attains nothing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Guilty as charged on this guy. There's a lot of things that interest me. And it's so hard for me to just narrow things. Like, I know that I want to be privy to a lot of information, or a lot of things that interest me. It's like the arts, or the sciences, or music, or poetry, or fashion design, or whatever have you. Just, there's a lot of things that are interesting to me in some way. Could I make a career out of any single one of them?
Yeah.
Maybe not everything, no, but it's still useful information that you can implement in different ways.
Yeah. Right.
But still, it kind of sucks when you feel like you have to narrow your scope. I mean, that could be one of the unwritten rules of life, is that realistically, if you try to spread yourself too thin, you can never really be good at one thing. And so what was an analogy I gave? This is more professional development than it is personality, but you could probably maybe adapt the two. But have you ever heard of T-shaped personal development? The idea is that you can, by T-shape, think of a T. It's like you've got a breadth component and a depth component. But the idea is that you can expose yourself to a lot of different disciplines, but you excel in one. But I had a manager who said, I've heard that terminology, but I don't really promote that. I actually prefer pie-shaped, which think of, I can't really make it with my hands here, but the symbol for pi just kind of looks like a bracket of sorts if it was upside down with some ornamentations. But the premise is kind of similar to where you've got a breadth component, that's the top brush stroke, and then you have two stems coming down, so you can excel in two other areas, which, as a personal example, in my case, one thing that I was often told from my mentors at work, that I know I obviously have been exposed to a lot of different things that maybe aren't work related, but one thing is I love gravitating between are technical and people. So like I know for me, as an example, one of the things that we market at work is that in this company, one of the things you can do is that you can either excel as an individual contributor. This is like the tech leads and the really technical folks, the ones that pursue like PhDs and everything else, ones that know their discipline so well. But then there's kind of other spaces you can explore, like that are one is program, one is people, but they're both a form of management. So you kind of have either the management or the technical route, which that's more common in most places. But still, I know for me, it's like, me personally, I never really want to be a tech lead. I just don't really, I don't gravitate towards much about a subject matter, although it interests me. But talking with somebody about it, I'm all over that. Like, I love learning about people and trying to help them get where they want to be. And that element, INFJ, yeah. And sometimes it kind of sucks because it's like you kind of want to be the person to be in the game that's kind of helping them. Because some people, when they're looking at leadership, they resonate the most with people who are really good at what they do. But I've met plenty of people that are really, really good leaders, but are not great programmers, or in the case of software development. But so you can have things with both, but there usually is a selfish, or not a selfish, but there's kind of an internal element where it's like, I know where I would love to be, but in my mind, I have to be realistic about what I'm best at. And sometimes that's a hard conversation to have, especially like if, for example, if this is a more tangible example, but obviously I know a lot of folks, they like going to disciplines that have higher pay belts sometimes. It's like how you have a lot of people maybe start in engineering or nursing, or things that have a higher yield later on, but then decide that I really don't want to do this, and then they get out. But obviously there can be a stigma with that, but it's not bad because you have people that will go into some of these really intense disciplines. Like I know there's a guy that I follow, he was at a big tech firm as a product lead and a software engineer for years. And then at one point he was just like, you know what? I really don't want to do this anymore. I want to travel the world as a photographer. And that's what he did. And he has some of the most fantastic pictures I've ever seen in my life. So I'm sure he may have encountered some people that said, oh, dude, you're making a mistake by pulling out of a high income role like this. And he's like, yeah, but it's not what I want. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, especially if you're dealt with whether it's a pride thing or just you being aware of the pressures of a modern economy. Everything obviously is getting more expensive. Yeah. So it's like you have to hedge against those things. But again, it's like, just because you decide you don't want to go for something that's more challenging later on, or not challenging, everything's going to have its own challenge, but for things that are higher paid, I don't know if you have to, what was my point with that? I forget, but it's like, there's not anything bad if you decide to take a step back, because again, what's the phrase I like to think about? You are more than your work. And that's really hard for somebody like me to really swallow, because it's like, I feel like it's like, I think INFJs in general is that we don't like to let people down. We want to help people. And if the way that we're doing that is as an individual contributor on a technical software team or something like that, I would feel terrible and I do have felt terrible about not being able to meet some people's expectations. And again, it sucks, because it's like, it's not that you just want to please everybody, but it's like these are people that are good at what they do and you look up to them. And so you fulfilling their expectations means internally that you've kind of won their respect in some way. And
Right.
to not get that hurts. And that's what's the hard thing is. It's like hyper focusing on the negative as opposed to the positive. But
Because, you know, as much as humans love to say, focus on the good, not the bad, you know, this is the thing about that. One, I'm going to make 2 points from that.
Yeah.
I'm going to make 3 points, actually. The first point is I forgot. The second point, yes. The second point is, if we're being realistic, let's be honest. Hurt has a bigger. How about this? Hurt can have a bigger impact than happiness.
Yes.
It just can. You know, and then this whole. I know this is kind of like going off topic a little bit, kind of not, kind of is, kind of not. That whole statement, it just makes me think of this whole statement of, is the glass half empty or is it half full? I'm like, no, it is literally both. It is literally half empty and half full. We gotta acknowledge the pain in order to see the purpose. We gotta acknowledge the truth of something. I just don't think it's healthy for us in majority of situations to just be like, oh, focus on only this. I'm like, well, okay, you know what? Maybe I could focus on that and this too. Like maybe I can just do both. Maybe it doesn't have to be an either or. Maybe it's both, you know? Maybe that's how I'll better accept my mistakes. Maybe that's how I'll just better accept myself and give myself grace and patience. If I recognize, guess what? I messed up at this. However, no, I messed up with this and I also exceeded at something else yesterday.
You are still no less than a human being. That's what I struggle with. It's like, yes, I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean that I'm less of a human being.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to swallow. But yes, exactly to your point on that. It's like
you can be awesome and make a mistake tomorrow.
Yeah, that's human nature.
Yes, and I wish I could take my own advice right now.
Me too.
Yeah, like
I never can.
Right, that's another INFJ thing is like we can give the best advice, but it's hard for us to take our own advice. But yeah, that's like the thing, and that's the thing. We don't really live in a
forgiving world.
We don't live in a forgiving world. We live in a world, and I'm not saying the whole world is like this all the time, but it's not easy to miss what I'm about to say. How about that?
Right.
We are our mistakes, and that, you know, our accomplishments define us, you know, and I just and that's what is, you know, applauded, you know, and I'm not saying that that's all bad, but however, it's not all the truth, and I don't think it should all be the truth, you know?
Right, yeah.
I'm just like, I think that I just think that as humans, I wish that we still lived or could live in a world that, you know, our accomplishments aren't necessarily, they don't make us, they just came with us. They're just something. So I already have my value of a human being. I am important, I am loved, I am valuable. Period.
Yes.
Just, that is. And then it can be still that and okay, I also did these accomplishments, but that doesn't define the worth and value that I already have. That's just, you know, I just feel like that should be neutral as well as like our mistakes, because at the end of the day, we are a valuable human being that's gonna come with these mistakes. It's gonna come with these accomplishments and success. But it's just like, that is just an add-on to our worth, our value. I just feel like as human beings, I don't think work, and this can be controversial, and this can be controversial.
Hot takes
and
are
I would
good
love
though.
to know
We need
your
them.
thoughts on this.
We need hot
Is
takes.
is the whole I just don't think us human beings should earn our worth and our value, because that kind of defeats the purpose of worth and value, because it's like worth is just given. Just for example, $100, like it doesn't matter if that $100 has been spat on, stomped on, ripped a little bit, crumbled up. That doesn't look like the terms of it deserves anything, but it has worth because we give it worth. It just is $100, and we can still buy $100 worth of items with that. If the dollar is ripped, we can take it to a bank and they can give us a new one. Literally, that's I don't know if folks knew that they can literally do that.
I never knew, actually.
You said you didn't know that?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's actually true. So folks, if y'all find a ripped $100 bill, take it to the bank
And swap it out.
Yeah, exactly. Take it to the bank. They literally will give you
That's also a fantastic analogy, by the way. I just want to insert that in real quick.
Because it's I just wish that it could be like that, because it's like, obviously it doesn't look like it deserves $100, but it's $100 because we give it $100 regardless. And so that defeats the purpose. I just feel like worth and deserving are two different things. I know they may look the same, but it's just like, for a human being to be just valuable and just worth it. It's a shame that we live in a world that teaches us we have to, and I understand that's also what comes, with our world. We do live in a capitalist majority world, and capitalism has its pros and cons. I just feel like this is one of the cons, especially being in a first world countries. You tend to see, fun fact, I'm doing an episode tomorrow of how capitalism and the effects that it has on just person's mental health.
Interesting.
There's actually a lot of information on that and a lot of research on that, and I was like, okay. Now the thing, but yeah, that is one of the cons that comes with being in a first world capitalist society. And that is the thing. This is not bashing. I love my country. I love my country. I love it. However, literally nothing in this world is perfect. So it's like, we're gonna have pros and cons.
You're right.
The thing is, like, I love my country with its pros and with its cons, because I'm giving this country worth and value. I just am. I don't have to agree with everything, but I want to give it worth and value. And when I say the word country, I also mean, what I'm mostly meaning is like people. It kind of goes back to my point. I just feel like human beings, it's not fair if we have to deserve or have to earn everything. Because I'm just like, well, what happens when we make that mistake? Are we any less human on our best days as we are on our worst days? You know what I mean? I'm just like, we are still human beings, and I just feel like that's where it needs to start, and that's where ultimately it needs to end. But that's just me. And does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, and I know that the sense of, I feel like that is an issue that's kind of plagued humanities from the beginning. I think, like, even in the United States, obviously that's in the modern work culture, of course, obviously it's hard for us to divorce personal sense of self-worth based on how we perform at work, and obviously that kind of comes in the form of like credentials when you're applying for jobs and things like that. But even in China, Xi Jinping, the current prime minister, president, whatever the term is, of the People's Republic, at the same time he had years of experience that he worked towards. And then Vladimir Putin, similar story. He got his start somewhere else and worked his way up. And so, of course, I think as people, we tend to look to somebody in terms of what they've done. but we can also put people on a pedestal in some ways. But
Yes.
even if we haven't seen what they've done, sometimes people kind of assume. It's like some people, it's like they see this person and they may be more open in some ways, but not in others. And so there's kind of some question marks. And in those gaps,
Great
other
example.
people can kind of fill in the gaps. And it's like, oh, this person must be like this or not. So there's some
Right.
assumptions that come into play. And that's not always true. And so sometimes the danger of that is that you might have a lot of people that look at this person and say, oh, yes,
Mm.
this person should be a leadership type, or this person should be really, really good as as a software engineer or as a painter or something.
Right.
But then in that gap, maybe sometimes the person that they're talking about
Mm.
picks up on that and they think, oh, shoot, maybe I have to be that for these people because they expect that of me. But, and if I fail to meet that, again, the similar problem of trying to fit in like with a group of people on a technical level, it's like, do I meet the expectations of what other people perceive me to be?
Right.
And that's going to happen in a lot of places, but
It's gonna happen.
especially social media. I think that's kind of one of the bad propagators of it. Is that in social media we're all an image, and so sometimes the only interaction we have with somebody, we may have only spoken with them once in person, if not at all. And so with that, you kind of leave the gate open to, well, what is this person really like? And sometimes we project what we think they can be, but sometimes that leaves the pressure on the not the projectee, but the one projected onto. They can think it's like, oh, maybe I do need to be like that. Maybe that's what it is. But that's a lot of pressure on you, and in a way, that might try to guide your own behavior because you try to be what other people think you should be, and that's obviously stifling. It's like,
right. Oh, John, John, you were just speaking to me. You were
kind of jumping around a little bit. I forget how we went on a long winding road.
Oh, no. That's literally, I know it's been a minute since you've been on the podcast because you were on season 1. But that's literally, I don't want to say the goal, but I purposely want vulnerability time to have a very loose framework. So we could jump from A to Z to the number 4. It just doesn't matter, literally, because it's conversational. And that's also something like, I am almost finished getting my graduate degree.
Congrats again on that. You graduated in December?
In December, so in a couple months from now.
Yeah, that's
been
great.
The thing is, I started this degree, and I'm just going to be vulnerable here, because everything that you were saying, I was like, been there, or I am there, or, am I going into there? I started this program because I saw myself, and I felt like others saw me as well. I'm not saying they did, I'm saying I felt like they did see me as, I have worth because I'm going after a grad degree. And if I'm being honest, I've not told anyone what I'm about to tell you. I mean, honestly, it made me, a couple years into the degree, I lost interest because I'm like, I'm not doing this for me. And it's really weird because the PhD that I'm going for, I genuinely want to do that for me.
Yeah.
I want to do that for me. So that's what's kept me through this grad program is that I'm no longer like getting that PhD to feel that that I'm worth something, that, I have to earn my worth from this PhD. Now, I would be lying if I'd say that that's not a little bit there of that reality, but majority of the reality is I'm doing it for me.
And that's what you want. That's what you want.
Yeah, exactly. And I look back, and do I regret anything looking back from the start of my master's program and then the finish of it? Honestly, no. However, I'm glad that it was a 3-year time thingy because I can't even imagine going my whole life and doing something to try to earn worth, to earn value. And then I look back and I just lose the stamina, I lose the fire. I lose any type of passion, because at the end of the day, I wasn't doing what I wanted to do for me. I was doing it for the appraisal of others, and that's, and I know I've seen I've seen like 2 videos of, pretty much it was people who, their biggest regret in life, and you would see constantly, looking back, it was living for the appraisal of others.
Ooh, yeah.
That's the thing. I don't want that. I don't want to go my whole life. And it's the reason why I'm making this parallel, because when I started my program, I had a quote unquote passion. And that passion and that excitement was, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get appraised by others. I'm gonna get appraised by others. And 2.5 years into the program, I don't have any of that passion. It's just like that passion was just using me. That passion was false, and now it just dumped me and left me high and dry.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's the thing I also wanted to circle back to, and I would love to know your thoughts on both of these things. When you mentioned the pedestal, that's the thing. Like, the pedestal is also symbolic of a stage, and it's like we get the applause on the stage, but guess what? The show has to end eventually, and people got to go home, and that's the thing. And I was like, I wish that I didn't have to, and I wish we live in a world. I said world. I wish we didn't live in a world, and world also can mean the global world. It can just mean your own personal world. It can just be your mental world. I wish we didn't live in a world where we have to earn our applause when we get on the stage. And I was like, are we not worth the applause on the journey?
Yeah.
And even worth the uproars, and when we get on the actual stage. But it's just like that worth should be just as much as it is on the stage. As it is on the journey, as it is on the stage, and vice versa. I just feel like the worth does not need to change, because I truly think folks are worth the applause on the journey. Because guess what? When we make that mistake on the journey, I want people applauding me for how far I did come.
Yes.
And applauding me that, guess what? I can get back up and keep going, and then I can get to that stage. I don't want people to be silent before the stage, and then now I'm on the stage, and then they clap. I just feel like a lot of us would be able to, be where we're at right now, where we want to be, if we had that support, that applause when we've made those mistakes, when we've gotten up, when it took us 5, 6, 7 years. You know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of people, and I just don't like how we live in a very neoliberalistic mindset thing. That is, for people who don't know, neoliberalism, pretty much individualistic. So that's what that term means. It means individualistic. It's basically that thing like, oh, you gotta make this work. You. And I'm just like, okay, but you can support me. You can applaud me. You can encourage me as well. I don't have to, and I shouldn't have to do it all on my own. As humans, we are communal beings. We are verbal beings. We need each other to grow, and that's how we got into this society. Like, humans did not come this far on their own. We needed each other. We needed each other to build this country. We needed each other to build this house that we're able to live in. We needed each other. No one human has done just one thing. I know we give credit to one human, but because they may have started it, but they might not have finished it. Look at Steve Jobs.
I was going to say Steve Jobs, actually.
Yeah, we give him credit, and yeah, he deserved. he is worth the applause. He is worth the applause. However, it's not just him that's carried the whole team. It took a multitude. So that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people would not have, quote unquote, given up on a lot of things had people not had their world, our world, whatever that may look like, you know, constantly tell us, you gotta do everything on your own. You know, it just shouldn't have to be like that. I feel like we would be a lot happier if people applaud each other, you know? I truly feel like that, because, and I'm sure this affects everyone greatly. However, I also want to, you know, acknowledge all my INFJs out there. You know,
let's go.
We tend to have tons of empathy.
Yeah.
We, you know, we can feel the weight of many things, whether we want to or not.
Right.
So
our own weight or the weight of other people as well, or what they're going through.
Exactly. We are the superhero when we don't even want to be. You know, when it's time for us to lay down the cape, it's hard for us to lay down that cape. Like, you would think, just drop it, drop the cape. No, that's
it's not
hard.
that simple.
Yeah, it hurts. It's just a cape, but that cape has meaning. That cape is hard, and we're not necessarily taught, okay, this is the time to lay the cape down. Not everyone's taught that. And so I don't know, John, I just think that, you know, what we just talked about, it can affect anyone. You know, I just want to specifically also acknowledge the INFJs out there, because I feel like that what we just talked about, it is so hard to break out of that. You know, it's so hard to, you know, I'm not saying no one else has it difficult. No, everyone has it, you know, every other personality type has it, you know, hard in this area, or can have it hard in this area. But those level of difficulties can look different.
Yes, yeah.
And I think it looks a lot different for INFJ.
Yes, they certainly do.
Which is you and I, INFJs. Which is only 2% of us exist in the country of the US.
I'd forgotten what the percentage was. That's
what the exact percentage. Low. It's 1 to 3%. I believe I saw 2%. It was either 1.3 or 2%. I saw
it's
like
still pretty low.
I saw 1.3. I've seen 2%. Yeah, it's really low. It's extremely low. So I know that was a lot to take in, but what do you think? I'm trying
to think where to pick up, but yeah, the trusting the process and the journey. Yes, because again, it's. The stage analogy was good. It's an iceberg. If you think about that, it's that classic analogy that everybody pulls out, where it's like the iceberg that you see, only this much of it is above the water, and then like all this beneath it is what actually went into to whatever you're working towards. And so that's the case. It's like you may spend years getting to something like that, but what people ultimately see is the end of the fruit of your efforts, or one's singular moment or role that you're in, as opposed to the path that brought you there. And supporting people along the way, yes, but I'll also take that one step further and making sure that you encourage whoever is going on this path, that you make sure that whenever they're making that path, you ensure that they are always in an environment that allows them to make a mistake. And while everyone may not, some people may be able to discern their efforts from their own sense of self-worth, not everybody has it that easy. And so making them feel like they're in an environment where, like, even if you make a mistake, it's like, I'm not going to speak to you as if you've made a mistake. I won't berate you for your mistakes. That's good that you made that mistake. I'll be here to support you during that process.
Right.
So do not worry. We do not think any less of you as a human being or as anything else. We are here for you, and we are going to stay with you. We're not going to send you down the line to be somebody else's problem. We're not going to boot you out of here. We know that you're here to learn, and this is not an easy stuff.
Mistakes, failures are a precursor to success. There are things that failures can teach us that success can never teach us.
Yes.
You know, it's just like there are so many like qualities that failure and failure hurts.
It sucks.
But
It's
what if it's necessary? Yeah, it sucks. It's just like, you know, I wish someone told me growing up that failure, what if that is necessary?
And it's so hard to internalize that whenever if you find yourself in an environment where people always like talk bad about people that screw up in some way, and I know like in our case as INFJs, it's like we see that and we think, crap, I don't want that to be me. I don't want to be that guy that everybody always complains about, and then it's you may ultimately end up in that spot, which I hate, because it's like, no, we learn from our mistakes. It's like, even if we make the same mistake 2 or 3 times, that's fine. It's like, in my spare time, I like studying Japanese, and so with that, one of the tools that I use as a reference guide is Duolingo. If you've ever used Duolingo before, if you've used the free version, you have 5 mistakes you can make, and after that, that's it. You have to do practices to get your hearts back, unless you pay for the free version. There are trials you can get, but I got to tell you, I've been trying a 2-month trial for that process. It's a whole different world, because learning another language is not easy, especially one that's so different.
I actually have Duolingo, and I actually am starting to learn Japanese. I just want you to know that, by the way.
Nice.
I literally have the app on my phone, Japanese and Spanish. Go for it.
Nice. Sorry. Yeah, so, but obviously you've probably seen some of the basic grammar structure differences of Japanese. It's backwards from what they teach you in English. And so, of course, when you try to internalize that, trying to predict the behavior, there's a lot of mistakes you're going to make. And so for me, in learning Japanese, one of the things I always love is that it's like, when in that free version, yeah, it costs money, but it's like, I can make as many mistakes as I want, because I'm going to make a tremendous amount of errors. But that's great, because I feel so liberated. It's like, okay, I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to waste time. It's like if I waste all my hearts in learning something, I now have to wait for those things to come back or do practices and waste more time doing that. I instead can just take the blinders off and be like, all right, I don't have to worry about making those mistakes. Let me make those mistakes. Let me get that repetition. Let me do that. And instead not worry about metrics or how quickly I'm closing out those lessons, but instead just focus on actually learning the content. And that makes a world of difference. And that's something that I wish other people would also exhibit to other people. It's like, whether you're learning art or software engineering or nursing or something else, it's like extending that grace to other people. And so something I always try to do is that if I talk to people, I never want, if somebody is struggling, I want to talk to them as if, look, your concern is valid, your effort is valid. I will not berate you or speak ill of you for that reason. I know you're here, you're trying, you're doing your best. That's all I want you to do. You're doing fine. Do not. So that's what I like to try to give to people, because I know there's been times in my life where I haven't felt that way, and I want to make sure that I don't persist something like that onto some other people.
Right. I don't know what to title this episode. It's
a little bit of everything. I don't know. Chiaroscuro. I don't know. We'll pick a word.
Amazing. We've hit on.
What all have we hit on?
Points.
Planes, trains, automobiles, the stage, path to success, Lamborghinis. What?
Yes, exactly. Oh, I wasn't recording that part.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
We hadn't started recording when we mentioned the cars. That was like the previous.
It'll be our inside joke.
Oh yeah, it'll be our inside joke. Hi everyone. Yeah, John. This is like, because we've hit on like, there are so many titles. That's why you saw me looking down. I was writing down timestamps. You know, and then I just stopped. I was like, there are so many great titles that this episode can have. So I'm gonna write all of them down, and then I'm just gonna do eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Honestly, I'm literally just gonna do eeny, meeny,
just blindfold and look around and be like,
yeah,
this one.
Yeah.
It'll be the blank line at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
Just call it blank, 3 dots, I don't know, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do something like that. I'll let you know ahead of time.
Much appreciated.
But as a respect for your time, unless you have anything else you would like to say before we head out?
I have no idea. I've hit a lot of stuff. It's like, I don't even know. I might have repeated myself for all I know.
John, you're hilarious. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Well, folks, this has been another episode of Vulnerability Time. I am your host, Josias April, and with us we have our all-star, John.
Always a pleasure again. Thank you so much again for having me
Yeah.
on. It's always fun. Always a pleasure.
I see. Oh, I'm gonna talk to you about something after.
Okay, please
Alrighty,
do.
folks. I will see y'all next episode for whatever that will be. Oh, folks. This might be episode 2 or episode 1, part 1. Fun fact, folks. So I don't know until I release this. So, with that being said, whatever episode is next, I don't know. But see y'all later, folks.